The night they came to my door, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't just the knock, it was the way it sounded. Slow, deliberate, like someone wanted to make me nervous. I remember looking at the clock. 10:42 p.m. No one visits that late in Maple Ridge Estates. Not unless it's trouble. Our neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet sometimes. The kind of place where people mow their lawns twice a week and wave at you just long enough to pretend they care. When my wife, Emily, and I bought that house 6 months ago, we thought we were finally settling down. I was done with city life. Done with chaos. Emily, she was just happy to have a home that didn't require moving every 2 years for her. Job, she's a U.S. Marshal. Not that anyone here knew. We agreed to keep it quiet. To them, she was just another polite neighbor, the woman who always baked cookies for the HOA. Meetings she never stayed for. But that night, the side of her I knew, the side the HOA would regret ever crossing, was just waiting to surface. It all started a month earlier. I was painting the fence out back when an older man in a golf cart rolled up. He had that polished suburban arrogance, the kind you can smell before he even opens his mouth. "Morning," I said, trying to sound neighborly. He didn't return the smile. Instead, he pulled a clipboard from under his arm like it was a weapon. "You're new here, right?" "I'm Richard, head of the Homeowners Association." His tone made it sound less like an introduction and more like a warning. I nodded. "Yeah, just getting settled in." Fence needed a bit of color. He tilted his sunglasses down. "Well, we have approved colors for fences. That shade isn't one of them." I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. His eyes were flat, the kind that stared through you, not at you. He scribbled something on his clipboard. "You'll need to repaint it within 7 days. We like uniformity here." 7 days? I asked, still trying to be polite. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "We take pride in order, Mr. Dalton. You'll come to appreciate that soon." And just like that, he drove off, leaving a trail of silent authority behind him. I watched him go, and something inside me felt off. Not angry, just uneasy. Like this wasn't about paint at all. That evening, Emily came home. She was tired, hair pulled back in a loose bun, still wearing her black boots from the field. I told her about Richard and the fence. She didn't say much at first, just listened. Hands folded, her expression unreadable. Then she said something that stuck with me. "Bullies hide behind policies. Doesn't matter if it's a badge or a clipboard. Same mindset." She said it so calmly, like she'd seen this 100 times before. And in her line of work, she probably had. I shrugged it off. It was just a fence. What's the worst that could happen? I had no idea the fence was just their opening move. 2 weeks later, a letter showed up in our mailbox. It wasn't mailed, just slid in by hand. No return address. Notice of violation. Apparently our garbage cans had been visible from the street for 10 minutes after pickup. Fine. $150. Emily raised an eyebrow when I showed her. "They're watching us," she said. I laughed nervously. "You make it sound like a surveillance operation." Her expression didn't change. "It is, in a way. These HOA boards, when they're corrupt, use control as their weapon. Today, it's garbage cans. Tomorrow, it's property liens." She wasn't wrong. That night, I noticed something. A black SUV idling at the corner of our street. No lights, no movement. When I stepped outside to take the trash, it rolled away slowly. Coincidence? Maybe. But the next day, Richard sent another notice. "Your grass is 2 inches over regulation height." 2 inches. I tried to talk to him, reason with him, but every time, he smiled like he knew something I didn't. I told me to keep calm. "They'll hang themselves if you let them talk long enough," she said. And she was right. I just didn't expect it to get that dark that fast. A few days later, I came home from work to find 2 men standing in our driveway. They were dressed in dark clothes, tactical pants, boots, black polos, with shiny badges clipped to their belts. Police, I thought. One of them flashed a fake smile. "Mr. Dalton, we've had some complaints from your HOA about violations. Mind if we come in?" "Complaints? From the HOA? That didn't sound like police business. Do you have a warrant?" I asked cautiously. The taller one smirked. "We don't need one, sir. Just a routine compliance check." That's when Emily stepped out of the house. Calm, collected. She had that look, the one I've seen her use in interrogation rooms. "Routine compliance check?" she said softly. "Which department are you from?" The man hesitated. Local precinct. Which one? She pressed. He shifted uncomfortably. Downtown. Her eyes narrowed. Downtown doesn't handle HOA complaints. Try again. The other man tried to interrupt. Ma'am, we're just here to show me your badges, she said. They hesitated. It was too long. She took one step forward, calm but commanding. Now. When they did, I saw it. The badges were shiny, but cheap. Wrong shape. Wrong texture. Wrong everything. Emily didn't blink. You two have 5 seconds to explain why you're impersonating officers before I make a phone call that'll change your night. Her tone wasn't loud, just steady. Like a loaded weapon pointed straight at their lies. The taller man stammered. We were just contractors. The HOA asked us to do what? She snapped. Intimidate homeowners? Extort compliance? They froze. And then, without another word, they turned and started backing away. Emily reached into her jacket. Slowly, deliberately. And when she pulled out her real badge, that gold US Marshal insignia, the color drained from there. Faces, they didn't wait for another word. They ran full sprint. Down the driveway, across the cul-de-sac, into the night. I stood there speechless. My wife just watched them go, calm as a stone. Then she looked at me and said, "Told you. Bullies hide behind policy." We called the sheriff's department that night. They confirmed no officers had been dispatched. No warrants. No reports. Nothing. The next morning, our mailbox was stuffed with papers, notices, fines, HOA threats. All unsigned. All printed from the same computer. It was clear the HOA was trying to scare us off. But they didn't know who they were messing with. Emily wasn't just a marshal. She was tactical, strategic. She didn't react with anger. She observed. Let them dig their hole, she said. We'll document everything. And that's what we did. Every letter, every visit, every suspicious car. She kept a log, names, times, even photos. Within a week, she'd built a file thicker than a legal case, because that's exactly what it was going to become. But before justice came, they tried one last trick. Richard showed up at our door again, this time with 3 other board members. He had a smug look, like he thought we'd back down. Mr. and Mrs. Dalton, he said, smiling. We're here to discuss your ongoing violations. Emily leaned against the doorframe. You mean the fake ones? His smile twitched. Excuse me? You sent men posing as police officers? That's a felony, Richard. The woman beside him shifted nervously. I'm sure there's some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Emily said, her voice ice cold. We've reported it. The sheriff's department is aware, and so is the U.S. Attorney's office. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in Richard's eyes. He glanced at me, then back at Emily. You're bluffing, he muttered. Emily smiled slightly. Am I? She opened the door wider. On the table behind her were printed documents, the same violation letters. Photos, timestamps, and screenshots of their texts. You want to play legal? She said. Let's play legal. Richard's confidence crumbled. He stammered something about procedures and oversight, but his voice was shaking. They left soon after, their silence louder than any threat. That night, as we sat on the porch, the crickets singing in the dark, Emily looked at me and said something I'll never forget. Justice isn't about making them afraid. It's about making sure they can't do it again. Her words hit deep, because this wasn't just about us anymore. It was about every neighbor too scared to speak up. And in that moment, I realized something else. The fence, the fines, the fake cops, it wasn't just harassment. It was a system built on fear, but they'd messed with the wrong people. Because my wife wasn't just any homeowner. She was the calm before their storm. For the next few days, the neighborhood felt like something beneath the surface had cracked, and everyone was pretending not to hear it. Neighbors who used to wave now looked the other way. The friendly couple across the street stopped making eye contact, and every time I went to get the mail, I could feel eyes watching from behind drawn curtains. Emily called it containment silence, the kind that spreads when people are afraid of the truth.
Getting out.
She'd seen it before, she said. In small towns where corruption thrived on quiet compliance, but we weren't going to be quiet. Not anymore, the morning after Richard's visit. Emily started her investigation, not as a marshal, not officially at least. She was careful about that. This wasn't her case, not yet. But she knew how to trace, how to dig, how to see. She started with the HOA's financial statements, the ones publicly available on their website. Most homeowners never look at those, but Emily did. Within an hour, she found something strange. Line items labeled Community Improvement Services, thousands of dollars paid monthly to a company called Ridgeway Security Solutions. She looked it up. No physical address. No online presence, nothing but a disconnected phone number. Her expression tightened. That's who those fake cops worked for, she said. I remember the way her voice dropped, calm, focused. Dangerous in the quietest way possible. She started connecting the dots. Richard, the HOA president, was also listed as the registered agent for Ridgeway Security Solutions. He wasn't hiring security. He was the security company. He'd been funneling HOA funds into his own business, creating a false paper trail to justify harassment. The fake cops? They were part of his intimidation tactics. Scare homeowners into compliance, rack up fines, keep the cash flowing, and nobody had ever questioned it until now, over the next week. Emily built her case. Every document she downloaded, she backed up twice. Every call she made, she recorded. Every message she received, she archived. I'd never seen her like that before. Methodical, cold, almost surgical in her precision. Meanwhile, I started hearing whispers. At the local coffee shop, a woman murmured to a friend, "Did you hear about the Daltons? Richard's after them next." Another neighbor, a quiet man who rarely spoke, approached me one morning. "They tried to do the same thing to me last year," he said softly. "They fined me until I almost lost my house. Be careful." That's when I realized it wasn't just us. Richard had been doing this for years. Emily decided it was time to act. It started small, a single envelope, mailed anonymously to every homeowner in Maple Ridge Estates. Inside, copies of documents showing the HOA's financial irregularities. No names. No explanations. Just facts. By the second day, the neighborhood was buzzing. People stopped pretending. The same neighbors who avoided us were now whispering in groups, glancing nervously toward Richard's house. And that's when the retaliation began. We woke up one morning to find our mailbox smashed in. The next day, our security cameras were ripped from the walls. Richard was getting desperate. He knew his little empire was cracking, and he was willing to push harder before it fell apart completely. Emily stayed calm. She filed reports with the local sheriff official this time. She shared everything, down to the timestamps of the fake officer's visit, and when the sheriff saw her credentials, his tone changed completely. He promised to investigate personally. That's when things started moving fast. 2 days later, an unmarked car pulled up to our house. A real one this time. A man stepped out. Gray suit, calm demeanor, briefcase in hand. "Mrs. Dalton?" he asked. "Yes," Emily replied. "Special Agent Carter, Department of Justice. I believe you filed a report regarding impersonation and HOA corruption?" Emily nodded. "I did. I've compiled evidence, financial links, false notices, intimidation attempts, and the use of fake law enforcement." He smiled slightly. "You've done most of my work for me." They talked for an hour, maybe more. By the time he left, he had a thick folder under his arm and a promise to take it from here. But Emily wasn't done. That night, she turned to me and said, "Justice is coming. But I want them to feel it before it hits." The next HOA meeting was scheduled for that Friday. We decided to attend. We hadn't been inside that community hall since moving in, the walls lined with fake smiles, the air heavy with self-importance. When we walked in, the room went silent. Every head turned. Richard sat at the front table, flanked by his board members. He looked smug, like he thought this was his victory lap. "Well, well," he said, adjusting his tie. "Mr. and Mrs. Dalton? I didn't expect to see you here after your recent troubles." Emily smiled politely. "We like to stay informed," he leaned back. "Informed is good, cooperative is better." I could feel the tension in the room. Thick electric dot. Emily reached into her bag, pulled out a small folder and placed it on the table. "Speaking of cooperation," she said, "perhaps you'd like to explain this." He frowned. "What's that supposed to be?" "Your signature," she said. "On payments made from HOA accounts to Ridgeway Security Solutions, a company you own?" The room went dead quiet. Someone gasped softly. Richard's face went pale. "That's confidential HOA business, not anymore," Emily interrupted. You used HOA funds for personal gain. You hired unlicensed individuals to intimidate homeowners. You committed fraud, Richard, and you did it all under the name of community service. He tried to stand, but she stopped him cold with one line. Oh, and by the way, impersonating a federal officer. That's up to 3 years in prison. He froze. And then, as if on cue, the doors opened. 2 real deputies walked in. Richard Hale. One of them called out. He looked around, panicked. This is insane. You can't, but they could. And they did. As they cuffed him and read his rights, Emily stood there, silent. Calm the same way she had been the night those fake cops ran. Justice had come full circle. The fallout was swift. Within a week, the entire HOA board resigned. Investigations uncovered thousands in misappropriated funds and multiple instances of intimidation. The residents banded together, forming a temporary committee to rebuild the association, this time transparently, and us. We stayed. People started coming to our door again, not with complaints, but with gratitude. Baked pies, thank you notes, quiet words of respect. The same neighbors who once looked away now looked up to us. But for Emily, it wasn't about power. It was about principle. She never gloated, never bragged. One night, as we sat watching the sunset over the ridge, she said softly, "You know what's funny? They thought fear kept people in line. But fear only lasts until someone stops being afraid." That line stuck with me, because that's exactly what happened. We stopped being afraid. A month later, we were invited to a community barbecue. It was awkward at first, people unsure how to approach us, unsure if we'd even show up, but Emily insisted. "You don't rebuild a community from the outside," she said. By the end of the night, laughter echoed across the lawns again. Kids ran through sprinklers. Music played from old speakers, for the first time since we'd moved in. Maple Ridge felt like a neighborhood, not a battleground. And as the stars came out, I realized something simple but powerful. You can't control everything. You can't stop people from being cruel or greedy or power hungry. But you can decide who you'll be when they come knocking at your door. And that night, as I looked at my wife, calm, strong, unshakable, I knew exactly who we were. It's strange how quickly peace returns after chaos leaves. The mail stopped bringing threats. The shadows at night were just shadows again. And I could finally breathe without waiting for another fight to begin. But every time I passed that front door, I remember the sound of that knock, the one that started it all. And I remember how it ended, not with rage, not with violence, but with justice. Real justice. Now, whenever I see new families moving in, I smile. Because they have no idea what happened here. They just see the clean streets, the bright lawns, the friendly waves, and that's how it should be. But every once in a while, when I catch Emily watching the sunset, I see that glint in her eye, the same one she had the night she flashed her badge. It's not pride. It's not revenge. It's quiet victory. A reminder that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And when it does, it changes everything. So if you're watching this right now, if you've ever been pushed around by people hiding behind titles, rules, or false authority, remember this. They only have power until you decide they don't. Truth might take time. But when it shows up loud. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that justice still means something, don't scroll away. Hit that like button, share this video, and tell someone who needs to hear it today. The truth always wins, but only if you stand for it, because you never know who's watching. Or what badge they're hiding, waiting for the right moment to make things right.